Lieutenant Rebecca Brooks had been in space for exactly 3 months, and she still wasn't used to the artificial gravity on Covenant Station. The massive orbital hub floated between human and alien territories, a neutral zone where species from across the galaxy conducted trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchanges. Rebecca was part of the first official human delegation, tasked with learning about alien history and proving that Earth's newest interstellar neighbors weren't the primitive warmongers some aliens believed them to be. The Galactic Museum was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Back on Earth, museums were quiet places with glass cases and bored security guards. This place was alive. Holographic displays showed entire civilizations rising and falling in minutes. Artifacts floated in shimmering energy fields, rotating slowly as alien tourists from a dozen worlds walked past, pointing and chattering in languages that made Rebecca's translator implant work overtime. Rebecca's guide for the day was supposed to be a distinguished alien historian, but he'd called in sick that morning. Something about a mating ritual that couldn't be postponed. So she wandered alone through the Hall of Lost Worlds, past the remains of species that had turned to dust millions of years before humans learned to make fire. She paused in front of a display showing the last transmission from a civilization called the Morvani. Their sun had gone supernova, and in their final hours, they'd launched every piece of their culture into space, hoping someone would remember they existed. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Would humanity end like that someday? A footnote in some alien history book? The next section was called Ancient Relics, and the lighting was dimmer here, more reverent. These were the museum's crown jewels, artifacts so old and valuable that they were protected by quantum lattice containment fields. The technology was beyond human understanding. The museum director had bragged that these fields could withstand a direct hit from a fusion bomb. Nothing could break them. Nothing ever had, not in the 5,000 years the museum had been operating. Rebecca walked slowly past cases containing fragments of alien art, pieces of technology from civilizations humanity would never meet, written languages that would never be spoken again. She felt small, insignificant. Earth had only been traveling through space for 50 years. These artifacts had been old when Earth was young. That's when it happened. The sound was like reality itself cracking open. A sharp, crystalline snap that echoed through the massive hall and made every alarm in the building start screaming at once. Rebecca stumbled backward as the display case directly beside her split down the middle. The shimmering energy field flickered, sparked, and died. Fragments of the quantum lattice material that was supposed to be unbreakable scattered across the polished floor like shattered glass. Within seconds, she was surrounded. Alien security guards materialized from doorways she hadn't even noticed, weapons drawn and aimed at her. Museum staff ran toward the broken display, scanners out, voices rising in panic. The crowd of tourists scattered, parents pulling their children away from whatever catastrophe was unfolding. Vorin, the museum director, arrived so fast he must have teleported. He was a Kalari, tall and thin with skin that shifted colors based on his emotions. Right now, he was flashing bright red, the Kalari equivalent of absolute terror. He stared at the shattered case like someone had murdered his child right in front of him. "How?" he whispered, his voice translator struggling with the emotion. "How is this possible?" "I didn't touch anything," Rebecca said, raising her hands. "I was just walking past and it just broke." Vorin turned to look at her, and his skin shifted to a sickly yellow. Fear mixed with confusion. "These cases don't break. They can't break. The technology is foolproof. It's been tested against every known force in the universe." "Well, something broke it," one of the security guards growled. He was built like a tank, with 4 arms and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. Rebecca's eyes drifted to the artifact inside the ruined display. With the energy field gone, she could see it clearly for the first time. It was sitting on a pedestal of polished metal, spotlit from above. Her breath caught in her throat. Her legs went weak. It was a photograph. Old-fashioned, printed on actual paper that had yellowed with age. The edges were worn, like it had been handled often, treasured by someone. And the image on it was unmistakable. It was her. Rebecca Brooks, maybe 6 months old, sitting in a high chair with food smeared across her chubby face. She was laughing at something off camera. Rebecca knew this photo. She'd seen it 1,000 times growing up. It had sat on the mantel in her parents' living room until she was 12 years old. Then one day, it had vanished. Her mother had searched the house for weeks, devastated. They'd assumed it got lost in a move or thrown away by accident. But it hadn't been lost. It was here, on an alien space station, protected by technology that shouldn't be able to break, in a museum that claimed this artifact was 150,000 years old. Rebecca sat in a sterile interrogation room for 3 hours while alien scientists ran test after test on the photograph. The room was cold, designed for species that ran hotter than humans, and she couldn't stop shivering. 2 armed guards stood by the door, watching her like she might explode at any moment. She'd asked for water twice. They'd ignored her both times. Through the transparent wall, she could see Vorin arguing with a team of scientists. His skin kept flashing between yellow and orange, colors she'd learned meant distress and anger. Every few minutes, one of them would glance at her, then quickly look away, like she was something dangerous they didn't know how to handle. Finally, the door slid open. Vorin entered, followed by an alien Rebecca hadn't seen before. This one was shorter, barely 5 feet tall, with smooth blue skin and large black eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He moved with the careful precision of someone who spent their life in laboratories. "Lieutenant Brooks," Vorin said, his translator making his voice sound flat and emotionless despite his skin still flickering with stress. "This is Dr. Kellen, head of our temporal archaeology department." "Temporal archaeology?" Rebecca repeated. "You mean time travel?" "Not exactly," Dr. Kellen said. His voice was surprisingly warm, curious rather than accusatory. "I study artifacts that display temporal anomalies. Objects that appear in places or times they shouldn't exist." He pulled out a handheld device and projected a hologram of the photograph into the air between them. "Like this one." Rebecca stared at her own infant face floating in the air. "That's mine. It disappeared from my house 15 years ago." "So you claim?" Vorin said. "But that's impossible." "Why?" Rebecca shot back. "Someone could have broken into my parents' house and stolen it. People steal things all the time." Dr. Kellen manipulated his device, and the hologram changed. Now it showed layers of data scrolling past the image, numbers and graphs that meant nothing to Rebecca. "We've run every test we have. Carbon dating, quantum degradation analysis, molecular decay patterns. They all tell us the same thing. This photograph is not 15 years old, Lieutenant. It's ancient." "How ancient?" Rebecca asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. "Based on our analysis, this photograph was created approximately 147,000 years ago, plus or minus 2,000 years. The room spun. Rebecca gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "That's insane. Humans didn't even exist 147,000 years ago. We were still figuring out how to make fire." "Precisely," Dr. Kellen said, leaning forward with obvious fascination. "Which is why this is so extraordinary. We also analyzed the paper itself. The chemical composition matches Earth materials perfectly. The photographic development process is consistent with late 20th or early 21st century human technology. By every measure, this is a human artifact, created by humans, on Earth." "But you're saying it's impossibly old," Rebecca said slowly. "Yes. So your tests are wrong." Vorin's skin flashed bright red again. "Our dating methods have been refined over 5,000 years. They've been used on artifacts from 10,000 different civilizations. They've never been wrong." "There's a first time for everything," Rebecca said. Dr. Kellen held up a hand, placating. "We considered that possibility, Lieutenant. So we ran a DNA analysis on skin cells we found on the photograph's surface. Old cells, degraded by time, but still readable." He paused, and his large eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "The DNA matches yours perfectly. The person who handled this photograph, who touched it often enough to leave behind genetic material, was you." Rebecca laughed, but it came out wrong, edged with hysteria. "That's impossible. I've never been to this museum before today. I've never been off Earth until 3 months ago." "We know," Dr. Kellen said gently. "That's what makes this so fascinating." Vorin pulled up another hologram. This one showed a desolate planet, gray and lifeless. This photograph was discovered 53 years ago during an archaeological survey of a dead world we call Terra 9. The entire planet is covered in ruins. Cities that turned to dust millions of years ago. The civilization that lived there destroyed themselves in some kind of catastrophic event. We don't know how or why. But based on the architectural remains and genetic material we've recovered, we know who they were." He zoomed in on coordinates floating above the planet. Rebecca's blood ran cold as she recognized them. Those were Earth's exact galactic coordinates. "Terra 9 occupies the same spatial location as your home world," Dr. Kellen said quietly. "But in our telescopes, when we look at that location in current spacetime, we see Earth. Thriving, alive, full of humans. Yet our archaeological records insist that Terra 9, a dead human civilization, has existed in that exact spot for over 150,000 years. Rebecca's mind was racing, trying to find an explanation that made sense. So there were two human civilizations? We're the second one? Perhaps, Dr. Kellen said. Or perhaps something far stranger is happening. The photograph you recognize, the one you remember from your childhood, was found in ruins that predate your existence by millennia. The DNA on that photograph is yours, but it was left there long before you were born. That's impossible, Rebecca whispered. Yes, Dr. Kellen agreed. It should be. Yet here we are. He leaned back, studying her with those unsettling black eyes. The quantum lattice case that held this photograph was designed to contain temporal paradoxes. Objects that exist in multiple timeframes simultaneously. Objects that violate causality. The field doesn't just protect the artifact from damage. It protects reality from the artifact. What does that mean? Rebecca asked. It means the case didn't fail, Lieutenant, Vorin said, his skin now a deep purple that her translator helpfully informed her meant profound unease. It shattered because of you. Your presence created a temporal paradox so severe that the containment field couldn't sustain it. The photograph recognized you. And when an object that exists 150,000 years in the past encounters the person who will touch it in the future, something has to break. Rebecca looked at the hologram again, at her own infant face smiling up at her across an impossible gulf of time. What does this mean? What happens now? Dr. Kellen and Vorin exchanged a look. Finally, the scientist spoke, his voice heavy with implications Rebecca was only beginning to understand. It means, Lieutenant Brooks, that either everything we know about time is wrong, or your people have a very different history than anyone realized. And based on what we've found in our archives, I think we need to show you the rest of the artifacts we've recovered from Terra 9. Because that photograph isn't the only piece of your life we've been storing in this museum. Dr. Kellen led Rebecca through corridors she hadn't seen during her initial tour. These passages were restricted, requiring biometric scans at every checkpoint. The walls here were reinforced, built to withstand attacks. Whatever they kept in this section, the museum took its security seriously. After the incident with your photograph, I started reviewing our entire collection, Dr. Kellen explained as they walked. We have over 2 million artifacts in storage. Most have been sitting in our archives for decades, even centuries, without anyone paying them much attention. But I noticed something strange in the maintenance logs. They entered a vast warehouse that stretched further than Rebecca could see. Rows upon rows of display cases filled the space, each one containing objects from civilizations long dead. The lights were dim here, motion activated, so only their immediate area was illuminated. It created an eerie effect, like walking through a graveyard of forgotten worlds. Over the past 18 months, our automated monitoring systems flagged several cases for structural irregularities, Dr. Kellen continued. He pulled up a holographic map showing the warehouse layout. 6 cases were marked in red, scattered throughout the facility. Hairline fractures in the quantum lattice material. So small our staff didn't notice during routine inspections. But the sensors caught them. When did these cracks start appearing? Rebecca asked, though something in her gut already knew the answer. The first one appeared 14 months ago. The second, 11 months ago. The most recent was 3 weeks ago. Dr. Kellen looked at her meaningfully. Your species made first contact with the Galactic Council 20 months ago. You began sending exploration teams to this sector 18 months ago. Rebecca felt her skin prickle. You think humans are causing this? I think proximity to humans is triggering a reaction in certain artifacts, Dr. Kellen said carefully. Come. Let me show you. They stopped at the first case. Inside was something so mundane that Rebecca almost laughed. It was a baseball, scuffed and worn, with handwritten signatures covering its surface. The stitching was red, faded with age. It looked like something you'd find in any American attic. We recovered this from the same dig site as your photograph, Dr. Kellen said. Terra 9, what you call Earth's coordinates. According to our dating, this object is 149,000 years old. Rebecca leaned closer. She could make out some of the signatures on the ball. Tommy Rodriguez. Mike Chen. Ashley Williams. Common names, but there was something about the handwriting that nagged at her. Who are these people? Dr. Kellen pulled up a file on his device. We didn't know until this morning. After we identified you from the photograph, we ran the names through your species' public databases. Tommy Rodriguez is your grandfather. He played baseball in college before joining the military. This ball is from his championship game in 2198. The warehouse suddenly felt too cold. My grandfather is 73 years old. He lives in Florida. That ball was in his garage last time I visited. Was it? Dr. Kellen asked gently. Rebecca tried to remember. She'd been home 6 months ago, right before shipping out for the Covenant Station assignment. Her grandfather had shown her his old trophies, told her stories about his glory days. The baseball had been there, sitting on a shelf. She was sure of it. Almost sure. But now that she thought about it, she couldn't quite picture it clearly. They moved to the next case. Inside was a coffee mug, white ceramic with blue lettering that read Galaxy's Best Dad. The joke made Rebecca's throat tight. Her Uncle Frank had a mug exactly like that. He'd gotten it as a gag gift one Christmas, but he'd loved it, used it every morning until the handle broke. Frank Brooks, Dr. Kellen confirmed, reading from his device. Your father's brother. Died in a shuttle accident 7 years ago. How do you have his mug? Rebecca demanded. He was cremated with his personal effects. My aunt wouldn't have given that away. We've had it for 32 years, Dr. Kellen said quietly. It was found in a different location than the baseball and photograph. A city on the southern continent of Terra 9. The entire city was vitrified, turned to glass by extreme heat. Whatever happened there was sudden and catastrophic. They continued through the warehouse. Each case told the same impossible story. A high school class ring belonging to Rebecca's Aunt Jennifer, dated to 143,000 years ago. A child's toy robot that looked exactly like the one Rebecca's nephew had just gotten for his 5th birthday. A smartphone, corroded and barely recognizable, but the manufacturer's logo still visible on the back, a company that had only existed for 20 years. 15 artifacts total, Dr. Kellen said. All recovered from Terra 9 over the past 50 years. All dated to roughly the same period, between 140,000 and 150,000 years ago. And every single one belongs to someone in your family tree. Rebecca's head was spinning. This doesn't make sense. These objects can't be ancient. Some of them are from things that happened in my lifetime. I know, Dr. Kellen said. Which brings us to the most disturbing discovery. He led her to a case near the back of the warehouse. This one had a fracture running down its entire length, and the containment field flickered intermittently, struggling to maintain stability. We found this 2 weeks ago. It wasn't part of the Terra 9 collection. It came from a completely different world, halfway across the galaxy. Inside the case was a data pad, the kind soldiers used in the field. It was scorched and damaged, but Rebecca could still make out the military insignia on its corner. Earth Defense Force. Her insignia. That's impossible, she breathed. Those pads are brand new. We just started issuing them last year. This one is 89,000 years old, Dr. Kellen said. It was recovered from a battlefield on a planet called Secundus Prime. The entire world is a graveyard. 2 civilizations fought there and destroyed each other completely. We've never been able to identify either species. Until now. He activated the case's external scanner, and a hologram appeared showing analysis results. DNA evidence. Human DNA. Thousands of human soldiers had died on Secundus Prime, fighting a war that happened 89,000 years before humanity learned to build spacecraft. Rebecca backed away from the case, her heart pounding. What is happening? What does this mean? Dr. Kellen's expression was grave. It means your people didn't just appear in the galaxy 20 months ago, Lieutenant. You've been here before. These artifacts aren't anomalies. They're evidence. Humanity has existed in this galaxy for at least 150,000 years. You've spread across dozens of worlds. You've fought wars. You've built civilizations. He paused, letting the weight of his next word settle. And then, somehow, you vanished. Completely. Every trace of your species was wiped out. Except for these objects, scattered across time and space like breadcrumbs. Rebecca stared at the cases surrounding them, each one containing a piece of impossible history. If humanity was destroyed 150,000 years ago, then who am I? How are we here now? That, Dr. Kellen said softly, is exactly what we need to figure out. Because these artifacts are all connected to you specifically, Lieutenant Brooks. Your bloodline. Your family. Someone went to enormous trouble to make sure these objects survived. They wanted them to be found. They wanted you to find them. A chill ran down Rebecca's spine. Who? Who would do that? Dr. Kellen pulled up one final hologram. It showed a sealed container, heavily shielded, covered in warnings written in languages Rebecca had never seen. We have one more artifact. It arrived at the museum 3 years ago, before humanity made first contact. It was in a time-locked pod program to open only when specific conditions were met. He met her eyes. It opened this morning, Lieutenant. Right after your photograph's case shattered. And according to the inscription on the container, it's addressed to you. The sealed container sat in the museum's most secure vault, 3 levels below the main galleries. Rebecca had to pass through 4 separate security checkpoints to reach it, each one requiring her biometric data. The vault itself was a massive spherical chamber with walls made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. In the center, suspended in an anti-gravity field, was a cube roughly the size of a showbox. It looked ancient. The surface was covered in scratches and dents, like it had traveled through hell to get here. But what caught Rebecca's attention was the inscription carved into the top. It was in English, clean and precise despite the damage around it. Lieutenant Rebecca and Brooks. Open only when the glass breaks. Her middle name. Nobody used her middle name except her mother, and only when she was in trouble as a kid. Rebecca's hands were shaking as she reached toward the cube. Wait, Vorin said sharply. He'd insisted on accompanying them to the vault, along with 6 heavily armed guards. His skin was a nervous orange. We don't know what's inside. It could be a weapon. It could be a pathogen. The time-lock technology alone is beyond anything we've seen. It has my name on it, Rebecca said. Someone wanted me to find this. Someone who might not have your best interests at heart, Vorin countered. Dr. Kellen was scanning the cube with multiple devices, his large eyes narrowed in concentration. The temporal signature is extraordinary. This object has been quantum-locked to a specific moment in causality. It couldn't have been opened before today, even if we'd tried. The universe itself wouldn't have allowed it. That's impossible, Vorin muttered, but his protests were getting weaker. Everything about this situation was impossible. Rebecca took a breath and placed her hands on the cube. The moment her skin made contact, the surface grew warm. Lines of light spread across it, tracing patterns that hurt to look at directly. There was a sound like reality hiccuping, a brief moment where Rebecca felt like she was existing in 2 places at once, and then the cube opened. Inside was a data chip, the kind used by Earth military for classified information. Beneath it was a piece of paper, folded carefully. Rebecca picked up the paper first. It was brittle, yellowed with age, but the handwriting on it was fresh, the ink still dark. And it was her handwriting. She recognized it immediately. The way she looped her Rs, the slight slant to her letters. But the words made her blood run cold. Rebecca. By the time you read this, I've lived 8 to 9 years past where you are now. I know what you're thinking. You're scared. Confused. Wondering if you're going insane. You're not. Everything you've learned today is real. Humanity did exist in this galaxy before. We spread across 1,000 worlds. We became something incredible. And then we made a terrible mistake. Rebecca's voice cracked as she read aloud. The guards shifted uncomfortably. Vorin's skin had turned a pale gray. In 2267, we discovered how to manipulate time. Not just observe it. Change it. At first, it seemed like a miracle. We could prevent disasters, save lives, fix our mistakes. But some people saw it as an opportunity. They wanted to rewrite history to benefit themselves, to make humanity the dominant species by erasing our competition before they ever evolved. Dr. Kellen made a soft sound of distress. Temporal genocide. Rebecca continued reading. A faction within our government launched Project Kronos. They sent agents back through time, targeting pivotal moments in alien civilizations. Small changes that would cascade through history. A plague here, a war there, a natural disaster timed just right. Species that should have thrived instead destroyed themselves. Worlds that should have been paradises became graveyards. Terra 9, Vorin whispered. The ruins we found. That was Earth after the temporal war. The other species noticed, Rebecca read. Of course they did. You can't unmake entire civilizations without consequences. They banded together and struck back. But they didn't just attack us in the present. They attacked us across all of time. They erased humanity from existence, removed us from the timeline itself. Every human who ever lived, every world we ever touched, gone as if we never existed. The vault was silent except for the hum of the anti-gravity field. Rebecca's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the paper. But erasure isn't perfect. Certain objects can survive temporal deletion if they are quantum locked to a specific person. I spent 40 years figuring out how to do it. I scattered artifacts across the galaxy, pieces of our lives, each one anchored to you because you're the key. Your quantum signature is unique. You exist at the exact intersection of the timeline where humanity was erased and the timeline where we're reborn. How is that possible? Vorin demanded. Rebecca kept reading. I don't fully understand it myself. The multiverse is more complicated than we ever imagined. But somehow, when humanity was erased, reality couldn't quite delete everything. We got a second chance. A fresh start. The humans who exist now, in your time, you're not the same people who built the old empire. You're something new. Clean. Innocent of the crimes we committed. Dr. Kellen was frantically taking notes. A complete temporal reset. The ultimate do-over. The baby photograph was the first piece, Rebecca read. The object most intimately connected to you, from before you could form memories, before your choices defined you. It created the quantum anchor that all the other artifacts attached to. When you walked past it today, the paradox resolved. The containment field couldn't hold both timelines simultaneously. The glass had to break. Rebecca turned the paper over. The next part was written in different ink, added later, the handwriting shakier. I'm 89 years old now. Dying. I've lived through hell to make sure you'd find this message. The data chip contains everything. Proof of what happened. Evidence of Project Kronos. Names of the people who will try to restart it. Because they will try, Rebecca. Even in this new timeline, even with no memory of what came before, humanity's worst instincts remain. In 18 months, someone in Earth's government will propose a temporal research initiative. They'll call it something innocent. But it will lead to the same place. The same mistakes. The same extinction. Rebecca's throat was so tight she could barely speak. You have to stop them. You have to make sure Project Kronos never begins. The artifacts I scattered are your proof, your evidence that we've walked this road before. Show them what we became. Show them what we lost. Make them understand that some powers are too dangerous to wield. The letter ended there, but there was a postscript at the bottom, written in a different style, more urgent. P.S. Don't trust anyone who says they can control time. Don't trust anyone who says it will be different this time. And whatever you do, don't let them find the children. Rebecca lowered the paper. What children? Dr. Kellen was staring at the data chip like it might explode. We need to see what's on that chip. Absolutely not, Vorin said. This is clearly a matter of galactic security. The Council must be informed immediately. The Council? Rebecca said slowly. If I tell the Council that humanity is going to discover time travel and potentially destroy the galaxy, what do you think they'll do? Vorin's skin flickered through several colors. He didn't answer. They'll quarantine Earth, Rebecca said. Or worse. They'll decide we're too dangerous to exist and eliminate us before we become a threat. Preemptive extinction to prevent a possible future. Can you blame them? Vorin asked quietly. After what you just read. Rebecca looked at the data chip in her hand. Somewhere on this tiny piece of technology was information that could save or doom her entire species. Proof of crimes humanity hadn't committed yet. Evidence of a future that might never happen. I need to see what's on this chip, she said. Before I decide anything, I need to know the whole truth. Dr. Kellen nodded slowly. My laboratory is private. We can view it there. As they left the vault, Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was holding its breath, waiting to see what she would do next. The weight of two timelines pressed down on her shoulders. The past where humanity had died for their sins, and the future where they might do it all over again. Dr. Kellen's laboratory was tucked away in a forgotten corner of the museum, far from public areas. The walls were lined with screens displaying data streams Rebecca couldn't begin to understand. In the center of the room sat a holographic projector, state-of-the-art technology that could render three-dimensional images with perfect clarity. Rebecca inserted the data chip with trembling hands. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the room filled with light. The hologram showed Earth, but not the Earth Rebecca knew. Cities stretched across entire continents, gleaming spires that reached into space. Orbital rings circled the planet like jewels. Ships moved between them in streams of light, thousands of vessels traveling to and from the stars. It was beautiful. Humanity at its peak, spread across the galaxy, thriving like never before. Then the image changed. A government facility, sterile and cold. Men and women in military uniforms stood around a massive machine that hurt to look at. The architecture of it was wrong somehow, angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. One of the officers stepped forward, a woman with gray hair and cold eyes. "Project Kronos is online," she said in the recording. "We have the power to reshape history itself. No longer will humanity be constrained by the accidents of evolution. We will ensure our dominance across all of time." The hologram shifted again, showing what came next. Rebecca watched in horror as human agents appeared in different time periods, on different worlds. A plague released here. A reactor sabotaged there. Wars instigated with careful whispers to paranoid leaders. Species that should have reached the stars instead tore themselves apart, never knowing they'd been manipulated. The Varelians, a peaceful species of scholars, destroyed themselves in a nuclear war that started over a misunderstanding that human agents had carefully engineered. The Kethani, master builders who'd been 300 years from achieving faster-than-light travel, wiped out by a plague that human scientists had designed to target their specific biology. Dozens of civilizations, hundreds of billions of lives, erased from existence so humanity could rule an empty galaxy. "Stop it," Vorin said, his voice hollow. His skin had turned a color Rebecca had never seen before, something close to black. "Please stop." But Dr. Kellen didn't stop the playback. "She needs to see it all." The hologram showed the response. Alien species, the ones who'd survived humanity's temporal warfare, banding together. They couldn't fight humans in normal space anymore. Humanity had become too powerful, too advanced. So they went back. They found a species called the Nexari, beings who existed partially outside of linear time, and made a desperate bargain. Together, they created a weapon. Not a bomb or a virus. Something far more absolute. A temporal erasure cascade. It would remove humanity from the timeline entirely, rewrite causality so that humans had never evolved in the first place. Every human who ever lived, every achievement, every moment of love and joy and triumph, simply deleted from reality. Rebecca watched herself, older by decades, leading a desperate resistance. They were losing. She could see it in future Rebecca's eyes, the knowledge that everything was ending. But she wasn't giving up. She was doing something with machinery that looked similar to the Project Kronos device. "I can't stop the erasure," the older Rebecca said to someone off camera. "But I can create anchors. Objects quantum locked to my younger self, scattered across time and space. They'll survive the deletion because they exist in a paradox state. And maybe, just maybe, reality will try to resolve the paradox by giving humanity another chance." The hologram showed the erasure wave spreading across the galaxy. Worlds flickering out of existence. Entire human civilizations vanishing mid-sentence. It was the end of everything humanity had built, the extinction of billions, and Rebecca watched it happen knowing that future version of herself had chosen this. Had accepted extinction rather than let humanity continue down the path Project Kronos had started. But the erasure wasn't perfect. The hologram glitched and stuttered, showing reality trying to heal itself. The quantum-locked artifacts created gaps in the deletion, paradoxes that causality couldn't resolve. And in those gaps, something new emerged. A timeline where humans evolved on Earth again, fresh and clean, with no memory of their previous existence. A second chance. The hologram faded, leaving only one final message. It was the older Rebecca, looking directly at the camera, looking directly at her younger self across an impossible gulf of time. "If you're watching this, then it worked. Humanity exists again. You exist. But the danger hasn't passed. I've analyzed the timeline carefully. In approximately 18 months from your first contact with the Galactic Council, a research team at the Geneva Research Facility will discover quantum temporal mechanics. They'll make the same breakthrough that led to Project Kronos. And human nature being what it is, some people will see it as an opportunity rather than a warning." The future Rebecca's face was gaunt, exhausted beyond measure. "I've included all the data you need. The names of the researchers who will make the discovery. The government officials who will try to weaponize it. The exact date when the proposal will be made. You can stop it before it starts. But there's a problem." She paused, and Rebecca could see tears in those older eyes. "If you reveal this information, if you tell the Galactic Council what humanity is capable of becoming, they will never trust us. They'll see us as a threat that needs to be eliminated. They'll destroy Earth before we can become dangerous. I've seen that timeline too. It doesn't end well." The hologram flickered. "So you have a choice to make. Stay silent, return to Earth, and stop Project Kronos quietly. Sabotage the research. Discredit the scientists. Do whatever it takes to make sure temporal technology never gets developed. Save humanity by keeping this secret. Or tell the truth. Show the council everything. Prove that we've walked this path before and failed. Maybe, just maybe, they'll help us instead of destroying us. Maybe together we can ensure it never happens again. But that's a gamble. You'll be betting the entire human species on alien mercy. The older Rebecca smiled sadly. I can't make this choice for you. I'm dead by the time you watch this, erased along with everything else. You're the one who has to live with the consequences. But I'll tell you what I learned in my 8 to 9 years. Secrets and lies are what destroyed us the first time. The people who started Project Kronos did it in shadows, convinced they were saving humanity. Maybe the only way to truly save ourselves is to be honest. Even if that honesty is terrifying. The hologram ended. The laboratory fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Rebecca stood frozen, the weight of 2 possible futures pressing down on her. She looked at Dr. Kellen, who was staring at the space where the hologram had been with an expression of profound sadness. Then she looked at Vorin, whose skin had settled into a dull gray. What will you do? Vorin asked quietly. If Rebecca Brooks tells me what she just saw, I'm obligated to report it to the council. They will see humanity as an existential threat. I know, Rebecca said. They might decide that preventing your species from developing is the safest option, Vorin continued. Quarantine at best. Extinction at worst. I know, Rebecca repeated. Dr. Kellen spoke up, his voice gentle. But if you say nothing, if you go back to Earth and stop this research in secret, how many other secrets will humanity keep? How long before someone else discovers something dangerous and decides they can control it? Secrets are how this started. Rebecca walked to the window overlooking the museum. Below, she could see aliens from a dozen species walking through the galleries, learning about civilizations that had risen and fallen. So much history. So much loss. And somewhere in those display cases were pieces of her family, artifacts from a timeline that no longer existed, breadcrumbs left by a woman she would become who had chosen extinction over evil. She thought about her grandfather's baseball, sitting in a case downstairs. The signatures on it, names of friends who'd played a game they loved on a summer day that should have been ordinary. She thought about her uncle's coffee mug, a silly joke gift that he'd treasured. She thought about the baby photograph, her mother's favorite picture, lost for years and found in the most impossible place. These weren't just artifacts. They were proof that someone had loved her enough to try to save her across the boundaries of time itself. Future Rebecca had spent 40 years preparing this moment, had died making sure the message would get through. She'd given up everything so that humanity could have another chance. And she'd trusted present Rebecca to make the right choice. Rebecca turned back to Vorin. I need to contact Earth. Get me a secure line to Geneva Research Facility. What are you going to do? Dr. Kellen asked. I'm going to tell them everything, Rebecca said. Her voice was steady now, certain. I'm going to show them what we became and what it cost us. I'm going to trust that the researchers, when they see the truth, will choose differently. And then I'm going to tell the council. Vorin's skin flickered with surprise. You understand what that means? I understand that secrets destroyed humanity once already, Rebecca said. I'm not going to let it happen again. If the council decides we're too dangerous, if they decide to eliminate us, at least they'll be doing it with full knowledge of what they are preventing. And maybe, just maybe, they'll see that we're capable of learning from our mistakes. That we deserve the chance to try. She picked up the data chip. Besides, I have proof that humanity can change. We were given a second chance. The universe itself bent the rules to let us try again. That has to mean something. Dr. Kellen smiled, and Rebecca realized it was the first time she'd seen genuine hope in his expression. It means there are forces in this universe that believe in redemption, Lieutenant. Even for species that have committed unforgivable acts. As Rebecca prepared to make the call that would change human history forever, the lights in the museum flickered. Down in the warehouse, another case shattered. But this time, Rebecca understood what it meant. Inside the newly broken case was a military medal, gleaming despite its impossible age. It was dated 2268, exactly 1 year after Project Kronos would have been proposed. The inscription read, Lieutenant Rebecca Brooks. For preventing the end of all things. The future wasn't fixed yet. But for the first time in 150,000 years, humanity had a real chance to get it right. And Rebecca wasn't going to waste it by hiding in the dark. She had a choice, and she'd made it. Now she just had to hope it was enough.